Welcome to the Driving Digital Transformation in State and Local Government. Today's session will be on a Teams collaborative calling. This will be presented by Chris Macaluso and myself, Joe Williams. We are both managing consultants within Catapult, a Quisitive company. Personally, I've been involved with Catapult for 6+ years in primarily UC. We're now in the productivity practice. And prior to that, had 15+ years of telecom and networking background. So Chris, you want to give a little introduction about yourself?
Sure. Chris Macaluso, also managing consultant at Catapult. Been with Catapult about 6+ years as well. Also the practice technical lead for Teams phone and voice services in our national productivity practice. And prior to Catapult, about a little over 20 years of corporate infrastructure.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Today's agenda in this session will be kind of all about state and local government telephony challenges. We'll go over, collaborative calling, what it is, and kind of what the evolution of Microsoft's phone applications have been, and back into, kind of bringing it back around to elaborating upon the collaborative calling and the collaborative workspace. And then we'll have a survey for you at the end of today's session. So I think the first thing we're going to talk about a little bit are some of the state and local government telephony challenges that we have identified. And Chris?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so we're going to try and kind of cover some of these as we go through the actual details of the meeting. But from a high level, state and local government has some challenges that are unique to that segment. For example, typically you have a higher call volume from the public, where our average corporate customer, you've got customer support lines and maybe some technical support lines coming in, but everything else tends to be internal calling. In a state and local government, every call is pretty much a resident of your local state or your state or local government. So pretty much every call coming in is going to be one of your clients, one of your customers, and it's a much higher volume of calls as well from the general public. On top of that, there's a need for flexibility for automatic call routing. So because of this higher call volume, the various departments that these calls need to be routed, you're going to have some specific needs around the call routing there on your auto attendance and call queues and what that workflow looks like. Like most businesses, the workforce reimagined. So we have a lot more workers working from home now, remote work, but state and local governments also tend to have more of a dispersed campus type environment as well. So routing calls among just different buildings can be a challenge. And then there's the additional add-on of communication with partners. Again, with regular corporate clients, this can be just a partner, reseller, someone like that. But when you're talking government, you're talking about maybe a relationship with the federal government, various civic entities, and all that communication needs to flow into and be managed by the same phone system.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll jump in here and kind of give you an overview of what collaborative calling is from a fairly high level. We will dive into some details later on in the session. So collaborative calling really kind of just expands upon what's already in Teams voice or Teams phone system, if you will. And it really takes like your hunt groups, like what would traditionally be called hunt groups, and IVRs, menus, brings those into a more immersive kind of collaborative workspace or for your users. That would be being a Teams channel, right? So you can actually route your queues directly into the channel. It gives you the ability to have your agents kind of be more focused and working from that, from Microsoft's thing that they've pushed for a long time is the single pane of glass, right? So meaning that you're not doing a lot of application switching, right? So you're talking about productivity increases by not doing that, and just bringing everything directly into this channel, and then expanding on that channel. So we'll get into some of the expansion capabilities a little bit later on here, but really that's kind of the gist of what that is. So I think from here, right, we're going to take a step back, take kind of a prescriptive approach to, what does it look like, or what does Microsoft Voice look like from an evolutionary standpoint, right? So looking backwards, if we look at kind of the traditional IVR and hunt groups, and what we mean by this are kind of your legacy type PBX systems, right? Legacy phone systems where, it was just a single platform, just doing voice, nothing else, right? And just routing calls, and that was it. You had some limited capability where you could get voicemail sent to, various things, maybe your handset, maybe an integration with email potentially, depending on kind of where you are and how old, the system was. But what this kind of equates to, right, from a user experience, and that is a disjointed user experience, right? It was multiple different hierarchies of applications, right? And you're doing a lot of app switching and like, you're maybe dealing with a device over here to get your phone calls, or, going to a different screen to get voicemail, going to email to communicate. So, really a disjointed experience. So that's kind of the benefit to what we're going to show you with collaborative calling, is it can bring you out of that type of productivity killers, if you will. And so this next, yeah, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So the transition from a traditional PBX started in the Microsoft space years back with Skype for Business. Actually, prior to that, even with Link to an extent. But in our online world, it was primarily initially Link and then Skype for Business Online. Microsoft referred to the Skype workloads as version 1 of their phone system. If you were to talk to them now, Teams is version 2, maybe even 2A at this point because it's progressed even more. But in the Skype world, whether you were on Skype Online or a lot of our clients, a lot of our state and local governments specifically, are still running on-prem systems and are running Skype. So you're going to be in this type of environment. Your call handling, calls are basically would come into a queue. They'd be routed to the Skype for Business client, and everything was handled there. It was a very kind of niche type application. It was just specifically for calls, very similar to what your desktop phone used to be in traditional PBX. It served one purpose primarily, but the addition of obviously messaging. But as a phone system, it just did your phone dial pad, and that was about it. So agents would receive calls, they'd ring in on the Skype client, and they had limited functionality, limited productivity tools available to them. Your voicemail on that in Skype, in that environment, was typically sent to your email platform. Most cases in Microsoft world, that would be Exchange. So an agent of a call queue, even though they took the call or calls came in and they were caller left a voicemail in Skype, the voicemail was not really accessible in Skype. It was sent off to an Outlook mailbox somewhere that they didn't have to switch applications to go and retrieve that voicemail message from. And then the agent experience overall, so obviously it was kind of a little disjointed as far as voicemail, kind of going back to the same feature sets as PBXs. You had to work in different productivity tools, whether it be a phone system application or an actual physical handset, and then Exchange or Outlook to get your voicemail. And then if you needed to collaborate on any of these messages that came in with various other agents in that queue, it was traditional Microsoft, chatting through Skype or creating a Word document and sending it out through email to someone. So everything had its own specific application, and it really was not that single pane of glass, obviously, that Teams gives you. So then Microsoft launched Teams phone system, and initially some of those features from the Skype platform came over. So you did have voicemails that would route to an Exchange mailbox. The interface obviously was expanded, so you could do a lot more collaboration in that environment, in that application. But call queues were still a little basic when it first launched. Microsoft has since evolved that and expanded the feature set. So now your call queues can be set to come into a specific team channel. So what that's going to do is, one, keep your users, your members of this call queue, your agents, all focused in one interface. So they can obviously make their own personal calls and receive personal calls in the phone system, but now all your call queues come into this Teams interface as well. You've got better visibility into the call flow, so you can see a history of calls that have come in, what time they came in. So if there's a manager managing this queue, everything is visible right in the Teams interface. Manager visibility into the actual agents that are signed in, who signed out, way at lunch, whatever, who's on a call. So all that information that managers like to see is right there. Then voicemail obviously is a big piece to this as well, where traditionally you've had voicemail routed into your Exchange and you have to go into your Outlook mailbox to get it. Now voicemail is visible, and the users can actually act on it. They can play it here in the Teams interface. They can see the transcription of the voicemail if that's enabled, and call back the user directly from the voicemail right within the Teams queue. Having it in Teams also gives you a little more flexibility. Some cases you'd have, maybe we've had cases where, police department wanted to have a voicemail coming into a call queue routed to specific officers or detectives in different branches. But those people weren't actually enabled for voice in the queue. Having the voicemail functionality natively in Teams gives us some abilities on the back end to also reroute those voicemails or redirect them to other mailboxes, to other shared mailboxes if you need that as well. And that could be, again, whether for its various departmental use, like the sheriff's offices or whoever it is that needs visibility into that, or even, just for discovery purposes, being able to have your compliance team monitor messages that are coming in or things that are left and be able to act on that as well. And then the other piece to this as well is the collaborative agent experience. So obviously everything being in Teams expands the ability of not just a call queue, but now you're adding in the other collaborative tools of the Teams interface. So agents can interact with each other, obviously through chat in the same channel that they're taking calls and making calls from. They can keep notes or running history of call logs. If there's a campaign that they need to be working on, you can have a scripted campaign messages all stored in the same channel, so all these agents can have access to it. And then you can even expand out, and we'll talk about this more in depth in a little while here, but adding in third-party applications or additional Microsoft applications as well into this same interface.
Yeah, so we'll be jumping into, talking about the collaborative workspace and kind of what that, the extensibility options here, right? And with this being said, right, that really one of the big, I think, critical things to Teams that helps out with is kind of that flexibility and kind of reimagining your workforce, right? Where your agents can be connected from virtually anywhere, right? They'll be able to come in from, if they're working from home and, maybe the particular, with COVID's kind of tailing off, but with that, that type of work environment, right? And or, just your different, different areas within the campus even, right? So, one of the other things I think that Chris, you talked about was, agents not needing to be fully voice enabled, right? So you can actually save, maybe a little bit of money that way. Or those budgets can get kind of tight. I know that's another, state and local government challenge. We didn't necessarily call that one out, but really that flexibility is kind of what we were talking about, right? With the workforce reimagined, right?
Yeah, real quick, Joe, on that.
Yeah. No, jump in.
Not to step over there. Obviously budgets are a big concern. Everyone's always looking to cost cut, especially at the, when your funding is coming from a government, it's kind of limited. We've had a couple clients who, very similar scenario, said, what, I just need to give my users the ability to receive calls. They don't need to make an outbound call. They don't need a phone number assigned to them. Having the collaborative workspace, using collaborative calling, gives us more ability to do some things in the Teams licensing space that we can, save some costs and only assign a very minimal set of licenses to a user. And that way they can receive calls, they can act on them as an agent in a queue, they can collaborate within this collaborative calling workspace, but don't necessarily need the full-blown Microsoft phone system, calling licenses, and extra costs that are associated with those. So yeah, it does give you some flexibility. But you touched on this also. The other thing I wanted to talk about here is
Mhm.
you kind of mentioned COVID and how it's tailing off, but we still see cases. Myself just had it. People still getting COVID, and
Certainly.
you're going to have workers who are working from home, um, or just dispersed and displaced, whatever the case may be. Given that this is all driven by Teams and powered by Microsoft's cloud stack, your agents, your users can connect from anywhere. They don't have to come into the office anymore to work in a Teams call queue, to work in a call queue at all. Traditional PBXs, you typically had to be in an office space. You had to be there so you can pick up that physical handset and
Right.
receive those calls when they're coming in. But with this being Teams and a soft phone, connect from wherever you happen to need to be working from at any given day. And your phone's going to follow you around for that business use as well.
Yeah, certainly. That's a very good point. So, kind of elaborating on that a little bit, right? The the shared workspace that we're referring to here, right? You're talking. It's a Teams channel, right? So if you've done any work with Teams at all, right, in the collaboration side of collaboration space, you may understand, that there are obviously some benefits to that, to your, having all of your conversation kind of in one place. People are able to work back and forth on files very easily. So that shared workspace is for all the members of that queue. So, everyone that's answering those calls, like Chris had kind of alluded to, right? The managers can see everything that's going on there, but the users themselves, right, are able to, you can tie in additional things for your your business processes, even like applications, bot, maybe some third-party applications, even to really extend that workspace and, further reduce, right, the application switching, those kinds of things, right? So, one of the things that we see in particular, back to that manager, visibility conversation, is, in utilizing the power of Power BI, right, to get into the reporting. And I think, Chris, you've done, quite a bit of work with that too. So I might let you just kind of run with that for a second. But
So yeah, with Power BI, we talked about earlier how managers can get some visibility into the call history and what agent status is set to, if they're on a call or not available to take calls, whatever. But most managers call queues want to have some additional visibility into the call queue reporting. So whether that's the total number of calls, the agent distribution, what agents took what calls, how long they were on a call for, um, various metrics, as the call flow as it came into these queues, and what the final result of the call was. The call taken, did it go to voicemail? So you can get those metrics. Microsoft has a free Power BI connector for Teams Phone that allows you to connect into the graph database on the back end, where all this data resides for all your call queues and all your other calls as well. So we can utilize that free connector and then start building out some Power BI reports to expose that information. And then you take those reports and publish them usually into that same channel. So the manager, who is obviously going to be a member of that channel as well, has easy access to view all that data. That's usually important to them for the various call queues. And being that it's in Power BI, you've got all your typical Power BI Microsoft security built into it. You can publish your reports directly in a web interface if you don't want to expose them in Teams. But to utilize that collaborative workspace and to expand on that, typically what we do is we will post those reports into that same team channel that the call queue is coming into, and just add it in as another tab.
yeah. So speaking of tabs, right? You have the capability to extend this with, even third-party applications, not just the bots and things that are within Teams necessarily, right? So let's say something like a Dynamics CRM plugin that's available, right? You could connect Dynamics into this team/channel as well. And now we're talking with the Power BI reporting, maybe a Dynamics CRM plugin. I mean, you're almost call center light-ish at this point, right? Obviously there's some of the barge in and supervised features and things like that of an actual call center and skills-based routing that aren't necessarily there. But if you just need something, kind of a light type application that's similar to that. I mean, you can almost approximate that here, right? So with that being said, some of the other benefits to the collaborative workspace is, we can extend some of this collaboration and communication, right, out to, your agencies or maybe you got on a federal level or a different, internal state agency that you need to communicate with or collaborate with, right? I mean, and that goes across teams in general, but specifically with the collaborative workspace, you can have those conversations as well. Chris, anything to add to that?
It's pretty much the possibilities are limitless. I don't want to sound too corny with that, but it is what it is. It's teams. You can build out applications. You can create pretty much anything you need to create within Teams. If you have Power Automate developers, or you want to put some more flow or incorporate some bots into it.
Yeah.
Teams is more than just a, kind of going back to that Skype thing. It's more than just a calling interface and chat interface. It's almost like a development platform in a lot of ways. So you can add in a lot of different applications, a lot of different automation.
Yeah, I think the
so
bottom line is it's just the extensibility is incredible, right? So, don't out of the box is not necessarily the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I think we'll kind of start wrapping this one up. So we do have a brief survey here. We've got 2 different QR codes. If you want more information, if you want to talk to myself or Joe or any of our other Teams phone experts at Catapult, that first QR code will take you to a web form. Put in your basic information. We'll try not to spam you, but we're going to reach back out to you and hopefully get you on a call with one of our experts and talk you through whatever your needs are. Develop a solution for you, put the right architecture in front of you and your organization to get you moving forward into a modern telephony platform. The other QR code is really just a survey for this webinar. How did we do? Feel free to give us your feedback. We're going to obviously take that and utilize it going forward. Try and make these webinars a little more beneficial to you and everyone else who joins them.
Yeah, so that's our session for today. We appreciate you joining, and thank you very much.